everybody. I'm Farah Ahmed, and I'm with Sue Hounstein. We are with the Fort Bend Voters League and Fort Bend CAN. We're a true grassroots organization. We care about voter engagement. We found out that these candidate conversations are the best way to get to know the candidates. They've been very popular over the years that we've done it, and so we hope you enjoy. We have a candidate here, Allison Drew for Fort Bend ISD. Thank you, Allison, for being here. Welcome. And let Sue get started with some of her questions.
Okay, I get to start you off with the easy one. I want you to introduce yourself, because a lot of the people that belong to our organizations don't know the elected officials. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and be sure to include why you're running.
Oh, sure. So, hi, everyone. First of all, thank you guys for organizing this and providing this format for the candidates. I'm Allison Drew. I'm running for Fort Bend ISD trustee in position number 5. I'm actually a former trustee. I served on the board actually in the same position, so I'm hoping to regain that position. While I was on the board, I was selected for master trustee, which is the highest board member designation that TASB gives. So one of the why I'm running again is to reclaim that and really give Fort Bend a voice at the state level. So a little bit about myself. What I do as a day-to-day is that I'm an enterprise data architect, and that's just for University of Texas Systems. And that's just a lot of words to say. I use data and technology to reduce inefficiencies in systems and get better outcomes and just have systems communicate with one another. When I'm not doing that, I'm a psych nurse. So I often say that I can have really difficult conversations in a really respectable manner. So another why, thinking that, we really need to have a cohesive board so that we can push Fort Bend or continue to push Fort Bend forward. In addition to that, I got my start on Wall Street. So my career start on Wall Street, which means that I know a lot about finance, investment, funding, school funding, all that sort of stuff. I'm married to our director of fine arts. So I get a look into those courses as they operate a little bit differently. So I'm very well versed in fine arts, CTE, athletics, just some of the other types of coursework that we see out there. Last but not least, I have a set of twins in the ISD. So I'm a mom all at the same time, parenting and really want to see my why is I want to see a continued advancement for Fort Bend ISD. I feel like, we struggled with some things during the pandemic or after the pandemic, and I'd like to see continued improvement. And part of that continued improvement, I think that, having some experience on the board will really help to move the district forward and, just provide what they need, especially in this position, in position 5.
Excellent. Okay, so as a former board member, I know you are all too familiar with this, but most people don't go to school board meetings. They really don't know what goes on at a school board meeting. They don't understand the job. So if you could just take a moment to explain to viewers what the role of a school board member is, and just exactly what parameters you have.
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of times when I speak to people about the role of a school board member and what types of things they do, how they govern, the things that they actually do touch in their day-to-day as a school board member, that often there is I would say just, a disconnect in what actually does happen at a board meeting. So you're typically one of the first things that you do, that you vote on, is budget. So one of the first things that you do once you're elected to the school board is to vote on the budget for the school district, which requires a lot of knowledge about finance. So, investment banking ties in the best to finance, where we're talking about things that are similar to things that you would see in the finance industry. So that's one of the first things that you need to do. You need to get up to speed on school finance, first and foremost out of the gate. The other things that we would do are we govern via policy. So policy is very important. I actually served on the policy committee when I was a school board member and revised quite a few policies that hadn't been revised since the 1980s. And that is just, policy is the way that board members govern, basically. And we, our oversight, so to speak, is of the superintendent. We do things like the superintendent evaluation, where we have to set goals and so on for the superintendent in order to see whether they're meeting KPIs that we're setting, for lack of a better term. So the board really governs via policy. You'll see us that we have different committees that we will often put together in order to gain insight into things that are going on within the district. A typical board meeting would, there would be an agenda set, and we typically get that information ahead of time, which means that board members are tasked with being prepared before they get to the board meeting. We also, in Fort Bend, we do a workshop meeting, which means that, if there are any questions that a board member has about anything that's in that board agenda or that board packet, they can be asked then, they can be asked, ahead of time. It's really that when we get to the board meeting, the idea is that we're prepared and that we're ready to start voting on things that are on the agenda, or to go through the agenda. A lot of our agenda sometimes entails just giving kudos to some of our students and so on. Speaking with our community members, that's another thing that board members do, keeping in touch with people, just really creating the appropriate transparency and the appropriate checks and balances for our superintendent that kind of oversees the day-to-day of the district. Board members are responsible for things like buildings, programs, things of that nature, you name it. Those are things that we will vote on. Those are the types of things that we will vote on. Those are the types of things that we will kind of set, we'll set goals with the superintendent to really just kind of look at how we're performing and figure out, based upon the goals, whether we're achieving the things that we want to see happen within the school district. But I guess in summary, probably one of the major points is that a board member is really working mostly via policy to govern, and we're really kind of we hire and fire the superintendent. We are the overarching, oversight of that superintendent.
Yeah, and you have nothing to do with appraisals, right? That's what people are talking about.
I don't do any appraisals, no. We actually do have people that we vote on that do the appraisals, so.
Right. I think people kind of misunderstand that school district has nothing to do with your appraisals, which your taxes are based on. Well, I get to ask some of the easy questions coming up, which is about vouchers. We hear about the vouchers going to the legislature, maybe awarding families, parents about $8,000 of credit that they can take to a private school or charter school, choose another option other than public school. What are your thoughts on vouchers and how that impacts, if that's passed, how that would impact the school district?
Well, it would impact it negatively for sure. I mean, so I think that the legislation is initially 8,000, then it goes down to 6,000. Seen some really interesting articles out there on that. Some of the homeschooling population is not necessarily for vouchers either, because they believe that with any money that comes from the government, there's going to be regulation. So I think we can expect to see that if that does pass, that we are going to see, even at these sort of charter schools and private schools, that there'll have to be some regulation. And one of the things that one of the reasons why it would be detrimental to the public school system is because we have to take every student, and we have to have programs for every student. we cannot pick and choose our students. We cannot pick and choose whether they need additional help and so on. We have to ensure that we have everything for that student to grow to their highest potential. That is not the case with private schools. They are for-profit or charter schools. That is not the case there. So it just kind of takes it takes something. First of all, it does take our tax-paying money and put it into a private institution, which So I know there's tons of conversations about the legality of that, but aside from that, one of the things that it would do is it would, in some ways, start to deplete our students, which is how we fund. So our funding would go down. We wouldn't be able to really support the programs if we're losing students, once again, especially specific to Fort Bend, where we already don't get enough out of our funding formula. It would be really hard for us to continue our programs. The other thing that it does, or it will do, or I imagine that it will do, is it will pull from our teacher pool. I think that we're already seeing where one of the things that we need to address is teacher attrition. And so I think that would just put further stress on that as well. So as we can't fund and we've got to make cuts places, I just don't see vouchers as a positive thing for a public school system.
Yeah, that's a good point you made about the teachers. I hadn't heard that before in terms of, going to private schools and charters. The regulations are totally different, and the burden that teachers have in teaching a class is different in a public school setting, and what they have to do. There's also a discussion of that $1 billion bond. The bond that's going to be on the same ballot as you're going to be on that ballot, right? With the trustee candidates. It's a big number. It scares a lot of people. People want to know, is this going to impact our taxes? They really want to know, is it fairly distributed? Is it needed? Has all the cost-effective measures gone through to make this amount a reasonable amount? And is it being shared? You have the east and west side discussion of the district. Is everyone getting their fair share of this bond?
Well, having not been on the board that approved the bond, I will say this, that I know the process is to be fair and to be transparent about things. I've looked through the bond and seen some of the things that are on the bond. I am for the bond, vote for the bond, vote for Allison Drew, just kidding. But there are things that we need. Our schools are in disrepair, things are falling apart. We have a school rebuild on there. We've got safety on there. I mean, we are looking at things with our resource officers not having the right gear or equipment for things that we see happening in this country. So we've got a lot we've got technology on there. We've got the natatorium on there. Everything that is on there is something that needs to be addressed. I have watched some of the board meetings. I've watched them go back and forth and discuss, what they would put on it, what they wouldn't put on it. So I really do feel like the board, they discussed it quite a bit. At least they did during the board meetings quite a bit. I would tend to believe that was what was going on behind the scenes. I think because I've heard from different communities that there was a feeling of not enough transparency. I think that we can improve upon that, and we could have improved a little bit more upon that. But I think that given the need, given the things that I see on it, they seem like very reasonable things and things that we need to address in the district right now. So I think the bond, hopefully, I hope that the bond will pass. I mean, there are all sorts of things on there in terms of that will help us, in my opinion, retain staff. There's, as I said, there's just I communicate with a lot of teachers regularly, and there's just a lot, unfortunately, a lot of stress the teachers are feeling right now. And I think that, you know, some of this stuff will help to alleviate stress and possibly even retain some staff as well.
I know Sue had questions about
Well, I
teacher
just,
salary too.
I know you've addressed, you've brought it up, so I'm going to ask you. We know, and most people know, that money from the bond cannot be used to pay staff, so can't use it for salaries. Do you know of anything that can be done to give teachers a pay increase? Not just teachers, any employee of the school district. You mentioned retention, you know, and actually attracting new people because numbers are down anyway. We need to know that we can attract and retain our teaching staff. So do you know of any measures that are being taken? Is there any legislation on the horizon? What's going to happen with teacher pay?
Well, there's definitely legislation out there. And so those are the types of things that we can do. You know, with House Bill 3, we had an unfunded mandate of teacher salary increase, where instead of, I was on the board that did 5% instead of the mandated 3%. So, I mean, these are the things and the ways in which we can increase salaries for staff, teachers, what have you. One of the things that I would like to see, so while I was on the policy committee, one of the things that, in terms of retaining teachers and the things that we can do for them, one of the policies that I had the fortune of being able to adapt or kind of bring it to real world from the 1980s to at least the 2000s was one that spoke to staff development. And, you know, teachers being able to maybe take some time off, you know, go do some enrichment. I know we had a French teacher that went to France and still came back and had her job. So, you know, in terms of like reducing stress, that's great. You get to advance your career. One of the things that I would like to see enhanced about that is that it doesn't have to be in your direct discipline. When I speak with teachers, actually I was just at a forum the other day, and a teacher mentioned that she had gone into technology, and all the teachers were like, hey, how do you get into technology? Well, maybe that's yet another way, right? That we can figure out how we can cross utilize teachers, you know, that their ceiling is not just in an academic you know, pathway. So creating pathways, you know, I often talk about things like possibilities, maybe this is at a principal level even, for like incentive pay for these schools where we're seeing, we're kind of cycling through principals, and that doesn't really help the staff to have a new boss every year. Maybe what we do is we do say, hey, if you're staying there for 5 years, maybe you get this bonus, and that really helps to pull the school together and to, you know, to help staff kind of not feel like they're going through tremendous change, because I think that that is often what is a contributor to what I'm hearing as staff stress, fatigue, and so on. So I just, to me, there are quite a few things that dance around in my brain and that we could do to really kind of prevent teachers from leaving, or give them incentive to stay within the district and develop their career within the district.
And I think that's our last question we have, and we thought we'd give you a chance to kind of do a closing statement and say what you would like to say to the voters that are going to be listening to you. So this is your chance.
Okay, well, you know, yeah, so I really do think that right now, Fort Bend is at a critical position. You know, certainly from the point of view of just having a very, very new board, I think that Fort Bend is in a critical position. I think that Fort Bend would benefit from having a board member that has experience, that not only has experience, but could move forward as a voice immediately at the state level for Fort Bend on our behalf, because we are seeing things like, you know, our funding could be titrated a little bit better, you know, some of these bills that are coming out, you know, really just getting somebody out there that can lobby forward for Fort Bend and our specific financial issues, so that we're not always at, this repeating story where we need a bond. So, really getting somebody that can hit the ground running, that already has the relationships with a lot of the staff, also something kind of, just like I was speaking about a principal cycling through, having a board, new superintendent, and just a really young board right now. I think that experience is really going to be the key to pulling everybody together and really getting us all to work on the same page. So, I think that also, there are several things that I would like to see, in addition to, resolving some of the teacher stress issues. I'd really like to see some gaps closed for our students, or to continue to close the gaps for our students. We've seen different things across the board happening in different feeder patterns, and I would really like to see some of those, those learning gaps closed. I was on a board that voted for, early literacy, full day pre-K, put the piano tech program in, early college, P-Tech. I'd like to continue to see us try and utilize that CTE center and kind of really focus on the whole student. Piano tech was put together, and I worked primarily on that program to really create a pathway for a student right out of high school to earn upwards of 60K, 45 to 60K, right out of high school with a high school diploma. So for our students that, college is not going to be their pathway, I'd like to see us continue to develop all of that. I think I've spoken enough about funding. We need somebody with that financial background, really, so that we're not, Groundhog's Day. We keep coming back to the bond, right? So, I guess lastly, as we go out and vote, I'd like for everybody to definitely consider me for position 5, and definitely consider that Fort Bend ISD is going to prosper with someone that can hit the ground running, pull the team together. My psych nurse background definitely. Some people on this panel know how much I like to talk. I talk a lot. I'm always available. I speak 5 languages, not because I'm bright or anything, but because I just love being in conversation with people. I think that, we really need to kind of, pull our board together, give our superintendent the ability to, to shine and really set some KPIs and set some superintendent evaluation, get some committees together, just kind of get all of these things together that either due to the pandemic or the changeover in board, or the sort of new to the superintendent role at Fort Bend, that we're just seeing a slight delay. But I think that we can, with the right people in positions, with the right experience in positions, we can hit the ground running and start to resolve anything that comes up.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Laura, you want to close this? Just say anything.
Closer, remember?
Hi. I just want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank
We
you,
really
Allison.
appreciate that. We know how busy you guys are and how much work this is. I would remind the viewers that the election is a Saturday election. It's Saturday, May the 6th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. voting. Also, you have early voting, which starts on Monday, April 24th and runs through Tuesday, May 2nd. The hours will vary depending on which polling place you go to, so please verify before you go. Also note that there are many fewer elections on this ballot, so there are not as many polling places open. So your normal polling place may not be open. It save yourself the stress of making a trip out to a polling place that isn't being utilized this election, and check the the elections office website before you go. And keep in mind, Fort Bend voters can vote at any Fort Bend County polling location. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Allison and Farah. This has been fun.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Allison. Good to see you again.
Great seeing you guys.